And I'd like everybody to go back to Bridge. And in the Week 3 Photos folder that you downloaded from Blackboard, we're going to pick the image called Buttercup's PSD. And we're going to zoom in on it. I'm at 400%, but I want to be able to see it because we're going to be selecting edges. So we're going to demo a variety of ways of selecting these flowers off of this background. The background isn't uniform enough that like the magic wand tool would work. There are some pretty good edges, or contrast in the edges, so the quick selection tool will probably work quite nicely. But we're going to show a whole bunch of them. We're going to try to find which one is best, and then whichever version we find to be the best one, we're going to clean that up even more to make it the best version of the selection, the perfect version. So, the polygonal lasso, the lasso tools, let's just peek at those. We know that if we have to use the lasso tool and go around this, it's going to be difficult. We know if we use the polygonal, we're making a bunch of straight lines. That's going to be very difficult too. Magnetic lasso is probably not the worst, so we're going to start there and try that one. So switch to the magnetic lasso. And we're going to click on one of the edges. Again, you're going to want to be zoomed in so you can see with precision. And you are going to drive around the outline of these two flowers as one unit. When you get down in the V's here between the leaves, you might want to click to put down an anchor point on purpose. If you happen to do something that you didn't mean to, back up with your cursor, hover over that last anchor point, and hit delete on your keyboard, and it will take out whatever anchor point wasn't right. So, oops. Go ahead and take your time and get this selection reasonably good. As good as we can get it with this tool. And again, if you accidentally double click, it's going to jump all the way back to your starting point, and you'll have to start over, which is not fun. This tool is working pretty decently, like I said, because there's a strong contrast on the edges. The yellow edges of the flower definitely contrast with whatever green or black is in the background. If this were on a light background, this would be a lot harder to do. Of course not. Close your eyes. I'm going to cheat. Oh, there they are again. Never mind. I don't even have to cheat. Good. So, marching ants are back. There is one part of this that we don't want included, and if you can zoom in between the flowers, there's this little triangle shape, right? So, I'm going to Command plus to zoom in so I can see it better. And I want to take that away from my selection. I don't want that to be part of it. So still with the magnetic lasso tool, we're going to hold down the Option, and we're going to click in this triangle, and I'm going to click on all the corners to make sure I get hard corners. And we're going to select that green section to take it away from our selection. So it's going to pull just the yellow flowers off of the background and not bring that green. All right, now to check our results. Make sure that you're on the background layer, that's the one that's highlighted, because if you're floating on the black or the white layer and you tell it what we're going to do next, it's going to copy nothing, and we don't want that. So on the background layer, we're going to do an Edit Copy or Command C. Keyboard shortcut is important to know. And now we're going to click on the highest layer, which is the black layer, and we're going to paste, and that's actually going to paste the layer above it. So Command V, pastes. Wherever your layer stack is, when you paste, it's going to paste right above it. So to get it to go all the way to the top of our stack, we choose that top layer first. So now we have our cutout layer showing, but it's still on top of the visibility of the background layer. So turn the eyeball off on the background layer, and that's going to show us what our selection looks like on a transparent layer. If we turn on the eyeball for white, we see what it would look like on a white background. If we turn on the eyeball for black, we see what it would look like on a black background. Which of those two, white or black, looks best? Makes our selection look best? The black, because originally it came from a dark background. So any fringe pixels that we might have that we didn't get perfectly when I zoom in are going to be dark. You see how they're dark? Therefore, when we show it on a black background, it looks pretty good. Whereas on a white background, we see those pixels a little bit more. So how good your selection is kind of depends on how you're going to end up using it. If it's going to be on a black background and you might have some fringe pixels that are dark, it's probably no big deal. You're probably okay. But if those fringe pixels are white and you're putting it on a black background, it's going to look bad, so you have to fix it. So that first layer, layer 1 at the top, we're going to double click on the name, and we're going to rename that Magnetic Lasso. So that's what we get as a selection using the Magnetic Lasso tool. All right, let's turn off that layer and go back and turn on the layer of the background only and zoom out to where we can see our two flowers again. So all things are turned off except for the background layer, and we are actively on the background layer. The next tool that we're going to attempt to use is the Quick Selection tool, and that is your fourth tool down, nested with the magic wand. This is always adding, so I'm going to make my cursor a little bit bigger. I don't need it to be super small. And I'm going to start, and I'm just going to drive around until I get all of the yellow selected. If you go too far, like this, see how I selected out into the green? I need to hold down the Option key, and then I need to kind of push these pixels back by starting outside of them and pushing them back to the yellow. When it's working in its normal behavior, it's always adding to the selection. When you hold Option, it's taking away from the selection. Okay. We're going to need to zoom in again on that small triangle in the center. We're going to make our brush a lot smaller using the brackets right and left. And we're going to hold down Option to take away, and we're going to click in there until we get that green area kind of selected. Might have to change your brush size a little bit. So with our marching ants active around our buttercups, make sure you're on that background layer. We're going to do a copy again, Command C. We're going to go up to the topmost layer, click on it to select it, and then we're going to paste so that it goes above there, Command V. And we're going to rename that layer Magic Wand. Or no, I'm sorry, Quick Selection, my bad, Quick Selection. And to see how that looks, we're going to turn off our background layer. Looks pretty good. Looks good on black for sure, and not too bad on white. I got a little bit of a mess up here where I was playing around with that edge trying to show you how to fix it, but it's not bad. Okay, turn off the eyeball for the quick selection. Go back and select your background layer again and turn it on. So the only layer that's on is our background layer, and we are actively on it. It's highlighted, and that's the one that we're working on. Okay, Magic Wand. Magic Wand picks based on color. So if this were a solid black background, we could easily select black and then tell it, nope, we want the opposite of that. Knock out the black, give us everything else. However, this is going to be a little tougher because the background is all different shades of green. And the flowers themselves, even though they look yellow, there's a lot going on there, right? There's a whole lot of yellow. So we're going to have to tweak this a little bit. So switch to your Magic Wand. It's picking color and luminosity and basing it on whatever you're clicking on. So up at the top, we have some information that we need to set first. The sample size right here says a point sample. So literally whichever pixel I'm hovering over, it's going to sample that. And then all of the rest that match it that are, by the way, contiguous. This word right here is checked. That means they're touching. So I'll just show you, and this is not how we're going to use it, so don't do this. A point sample, if I sample right here, it selected all, and I have a high tolerance, by the way, 32. It selected all of the pixels that were within a 32 tolerance of that were touching it, contiguous. If I turned that off and I tried another area, I might get parts that are sampled way out in other areas. So the contiguous means they don't have to be touching. So let's go back and switch this to a 3x3 average. So we're defining a color that Photoshop selects for, but the 9 pixels immediately around it are also included in that sample, and then the tolerance is still at a 32. So it's going to look for colors similar to that. So let's go back to the Magic Wand, and let's click on the yellow flowers. And depending on where you clicked, you probably have a reasonably good outline, but there's definitely some colors that did not get selected. So the way that we can add to that is we can hold down the Shift button and we can start clicking on these areas that aren't included to try to add them to the selection. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it goes too far and you end up picking on dark pixels that you didn't intend to. So by holding Shift and continuing to click, I can do that. Another way would be to start over completely and change your tolerance and then add from there. Another way is to use this tool to the best that it can, but then switch tools. And in this case, the lasso, the regular freehand lasso would be good. I'm going to switch to that. And to continue adding to this selection. So all these little marching ants on the inside are currently excluded and I want to include them. So I'm going to hold Shift, and with this lasso tool I'm just going to freehand around them, and that's going to include them in my selection. So I can just hold Shift and go around and lasso anything that's still not included and make sure I get them all. So the only marching ants I have are on the edge. Check up here and make sure that you're on this first add to selection or new selection, not on one of these other options. And then hold down the Shift tool while you're lassoing. Once you get that as clean as it can be, we're going to do a Command C to copy it. Going to go to the top of our layer stack, Command V to paste, and then we're going to rename that layer Magic Wand. And then turn off your background layer visibility and see how this looks on white or black. Let's do a file, save as, and just call this your name, Buttercups, PSD. And I want to quickly show you where the Magic Wand tool is awesome. So using it to select all these different colors of yellow, not so good. However, let's go back to Bridge and let's open up that wine glass again. Let's switch to the magic wand. Up in our top area, we want to make sure that we're on a 3x3 sample and a tolerance of 32. Contiguous should be checked. And sample all layers unchecked. We're not worrying about all the layers right now. Make sure that glass layer number 1 is the one that's selected. And with our magic wand, we're going to click anywhere outside of the glass. Notice it put marching ants around all of the white, which is really on this layer transparent. It's nothing. If that white layer were turned off, it's picking all the transparent pixels. Let's look at selecting with the magic wand tool. Deselect, Command D, and click inside the glass, and you can see that whatever color of pink you're getting, it's only that one color. So whenever you have something on a flat background, let's do a deselect, Command D. Let's make this a flat image. So right now the glass is floating on top of a white layer. Let's go to our layer panel and tell it to, way at the bottom, flatten the image. So this is how you get the photo from a client. It's a flat image on a white background, but you just want to take the wine glass itself and work with it. You want to pull it off of there. The magic wand tool, click on the white, and you see that you get marching ants around the white. What we really want is wine glass, the inside part. So right click with your mouse, and if your mouse isn't set up to right click, you have to hold Control when you click. That's a right click. And the option that we want here is inverse. Where are you? Select inverse. Sorry, I was just looking for inverse. And now our marching ants are just around the cup, the wine glass. We could do a Command Copy and a Command Paste, V, and now we have just that floating on a transparent background. So we use the magic wand to click on the solid color background, and then instead of selecting that, we tell it to select the inverse, which is the thing we really want. And the marching ants go around that, and now we've cut it off of the white. So the magic wand works great when something is on a solid color background that you can easily select. Okay, close the wine glass. We do not need to save it. Go back to Buttercups. And we're going to do another option. So turn off the eyeball for magic wand. Go down and select your background layer and turn it on. Make sure it is the one that's selected. And we're going to use a completely different version called color range. How we can select something based on the color range. Go up to the select menu at the top and come down to color range, and you're going to get this pop-up window. Just going to move it off to the side a little bit. All right, when this dialog box opens, we're going to look at some of the predefined color options in the select drop-down box. So if we wanted to select just the yellows, we could click on that, and our view changes down here. If we wanted to select just the greens, we could click on that. Only the highlights, it's going to change our view down here. Let's go back to where it says sampled colors, and instead of doing a preset, it's going to allow us to click on something to sample it. Let's see. Our goal down here in this window that we see is to turn the buttercups white and the background black. So we want our buttercups to show up in this preview as white. Let's see, the rest is all good. So bring your cursor over, and it's an eyedropper, and click to sample some of the yellow in the flower. And you're going to see all of the yellow colors that match that showed up in white over here. Our goal is to get this as solid white as possible because that's our selection. So it's not quite perfect. It got us going. The fuzziness slider that we see up here, pull it to the right, pull it to the left, how much it selects. So we can go to the right quite a ways, but notice you start to see, the farther you go, these yellowish hues in the background that are, I don't know, some of the foliage, they start to be selected too, and we don't want that. So back it off to where your background is black, but your flowers are as white as possible. Then we're going to hold down the Shift key and we're going to come back and we're going to sample where it's black. So we can either sample in this little tiny black and white preview window, or we can say, you know what, I know where that is. It's the dark shadows in here. I can do it here, or I can switch to have the image. I'm sorry, I can't do what I thought I did. Never mind. You can pick in here in the black and white area, or you can pick in the flowers. So hold down Shift, and I'm going to go and sample in these dark areas. Well, great. Look what that did. All of the darks it now picked here. So I have to back off on this fuzziness quite a bit or undo that last step. Apparently I'm going to just start over. So I made a big old mess. So this selection works really well when you have a color that's fairly uniform, but we have a whole lot of yellows going on here. Another thing to note, if you ever screw up and you're in a dialog window, like I went too far, I could say cancel, but then I have to reload this whole step. If you hold the Option key down, the cancel button turns into reset, and that starts you over from scratch. So I'm just going to reset, come in here, sample some yellow, play with the fuzziness, try to get it as good as I can, and then maybe hold down Shift and sample a few more things in here. If you hold down the Option, you can see that you get a minus next to your eyedropper, so you can take away some of the pieces that didn't work real well. We're not going to be able to get this to be completely black and white. It's not going to work using this. We're just going to get it as close as we can and say, okay, now we see our marching ants. Now we need to clean this up. So again, that lasso tool and holding down Shift to allow you to add to your selection. So all of these marching ants that are not selected right now, go ahead and include them in your selection, which you can do really quickly and easily with the lasso tool. Holding Shift and adding it back into your selection. Once you get that cleaned up, we're going to make its own layer again. So once you have your marching ants where you want them, do a Command C to copy. Go to the top of your layer stack and paste it. And then name that one Color Range. So now the question becomes, which one is best on white? So if we turn off our background layer and turn on the white layer, all of our different options are showing up on white. So the last one I just did with color range is not very good because I missed this chunk up here that got selected. So that's not good. So I can turn off the eyeball, turn on the eyeball of Magic Wand. Not bad. Turn off the eyeball, turn on. This is a really hard way to compare all of your different versions because you have to turn one off before you turn the next on, and your eye can't remember which one was really good. So there's a way that we can take a snapshot of what we currently see on our screen and name it something and then rotate through those. So sometimes if you're working on, say, an ad for somebody or a composition, and you have it all laid out and you have their logo at the bottom right, and then you say, you know what, I think I'm going to move it over here, but I want to show them that version too. You don't need to keep saving the file with 17 different names, like logo at the right, logo at the left, logo at the top. You can keep this one file and then take these snapshots or these layer comps and just show them those because they remember what layers are turned on, what layers are turned off, and where they are. And it can reposition it to show you that version. So we're going to make layer comps. So we need to open that window first. So under the window drop-down box, we need to find the one called Layer Comps and turn that on. And we get this little floaty thing right here. So this is going to remember the visibility, the position, and any appearance styles. So like if a drop shadow is applied, it'll remember that. All right. Turn on magnetic lasso with the eyeball over the white background. So only magnetic lasso and only white. And then in our layer comps window that's floating up here, at the bottom right, we have that new button and it says make a new layer comp, I assume, if it ever tells me. Yep. Click on that. And it says, okay, what do you want to name this? So you would name this in a way that you would remember. This is the magnetic lasso. And then, whoop, floating all around, you would want all three of these turned on because you would want it to remember what layers are visible, where things are positioned, so if you did move a logo around, and any appearance styles. If you want to make a comment, you could, and then you say, okay. So now we have a layer comp up here called magnetic lasson, apparently is what I called it. All right, go back to your layers panel down here, turn off the magnetic lasso, turn on quick selection over white. Come back up to your comps window, make a new one. Click on that create new layer comp. This one we're going to call quick selection. And say okay. We now have two comps up here. Guess what we're going to do for the next two? Turn off quick selection, the visibility, down here in your layers panel. Turn on the magic wand, and let's take a snapshot of that. So come up to your layers comp and click on the make new. This one is called magic wand. And then finally, turn off magic wand, turn on color range, come up to your layer comp panel and take a new layer comp of that and call it color range. Why do we do it? Okay, here's why. Go back to your layers panel and you're trying to figure out which one of the four of these is best. The only way you can do it is you can have your white background on and one of them at a time. So I look at color range, I go, not so good. Turn off the eyeball, come down to magic wand. That's okay. Quick selection, I don't know which is better, I can't remember. It's too hard to see via the eyeballs, but if we come up here to our layer comps and we click on magnetic lasso and we turn the icon off to the left, that's what that looks like. With one click, we see what the quick selection looks like. With one click, we see magic wand, and with one, we see color range. So we can easily go between these and see which one is best. And again, if this is an ad with a bunch of layers and you've changed things where the placement is all different, you can show your client all different versions that you created. And then when they say, oh, I prefer the one that you called magic wand, you can just go back to your layers and say, oh, I mean, you click on it here and it automatically activates those layers. So if things have been moved, opacity has been changed, it remembers all that and it shows you the snapshot up here. So it can't be because it's this one document. In order to do that, you would have to save it 4 different times and split your screen to show them. And now you have that file 4 different times. And if that file is 200 megs, you now have 800 megs on your computer. And over time, this drags things down. Okay, so from here, I want you guys to go through in your layer comps and personally decide which one is the best on white. Which one has the least fringe pixels that are dark that make it look not so good. Color range is terrible for me. Gosh, I don't know. I guess maybe for me, magic wand. We can all be different depending on how you did this, but whichever one is the best for you, I want you to select that in your layer comps, and that's automatically going to highlight the appropriate layers over here for you. So you don't have to think about it when you get to your real layers panel. All right, everybody have their favorite picked? Okay, whatever it is, come to your layers panel. It should have an eyeball next to it, and make sure you actively click on that layer so that it's active. Just because the eyeball's on doesn't mean you're working on that layer. So for me it was magic wand, so I want to make sure I'm targeting my magic wand layer. And I'm going to make a copy of this. So I'm going to go up to my menu at the top right of the layers panel. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to choose duplicate layer. And it says, what do you want to call this one? I'm going to call this one modify, because it's going to be how I make the best one even better. Turn off the eyeball on your magic wand layer. Make sure that you're on the modify layer and you have marching ants. And if you don't, all you need to do is command click on the actual thumbnail in the layers panel, and that puts some marching ants around whatever that selection is on that layer. So command and click on the thumbnail itself, this little guy right here. All right, so any issues that we have that make this not look perfect on white are that we have some fringe pixels. And if I zoom in, it's a little excessive. Those are the ones that are kind of problematic. So right now, my marching ants knocked out a few of them, but it kept some of the dark ones yet. So we want to change the way our marching ants behave. I'm going to leave my screen super zoomed in so you can see how this behaves, but you will see it on your screen too if you're not too far zoomed out. So we want, with our marching ants going, we want to go up to the select menu, and we want to come down to modify our selection, and we want to contract, make it smaller. And then it's going to say how much, 1 pixel, 2 pixel, 3 pixels. We're going to say 3, and then okay. On yours, did you see how it just bumped in a little? Look how dramatic that looks on super zoom in. It went in 3 pixels. All these dark fringe pixels, it's not including anymore. On your view, it doesn't look nearly as dramatic, and that's good. 3 pixels is not a lot. So, let me zoom out a little bit. So we now have our selection bumped in a little bit. If that's too much, I mean, I'm looking at that, that's maybe too much. I could back up a step and just contract it 1 or 2 pixels, but it's fine for now. All right, the next thing we want to do is soften this edge, because if we were to hit delete, all of the pixels on the outside of here are going to go away, but it's going to be that hard edge where it's going to be bright yellow to white. What we want to do is soften it with a feathering. We want it to go to a lighter yellow and a lighter yellow. So it looks yellow, but it looks natural and good. So with our little marching ants still going around, we're going to do select, modify, and we're going to choose feather. And from here, we're going to try that same number or less. I'm going to feather by 2 pixels, and I'm going to say okay. And now the selection is, I'm going to zoom out, our flowers. And what we really want to do is select everything else, all this outside part, and get rid of them, right? So we're going to do that inverse thing. We're going to right click, and we're going to say select inverse. And that's going to put marching ants around the perimeter. You can see them here. So everything between the edge and going into the marching ants is what we currently have selected, not the flowers. It looks very similar, but I want you to notice the marching ants are around the perimeter now too, okay? That's the big difference. And then on your keyboard, we're just going to hit delete. And that's going to get rid of everything there, but because we told it to feather, it's giving us a nice, soft, feathered edge instead of that hard edge. And then deselect. So that took our best version and made it better. So now if we were to put that on a light background, it would look reasonably good. And we're going to test that. And I'm going to do this so I can show you how your homework's going to work also when we move things from one file to another. So at this point, click Save on your Buttercups. And then I want you to go into Google Images, and I want you to grab a new background of flowers that's brighter and lighter. So the one that it came off of was that dark green background. So let's see, flower, or maybe just grass, I don't know. grass background and go into images. So something that's lighter overall. This is not the best example. Huh. How about flowers? Oops, got to spell right also.
That's a thin white to see like lilies.
Yeah, so I'm doing this one. Yellow flower background. Where did you go? Big Shutterstock all over it. Shutterstock is one of many stock photography sites. So they want me to download it, perhaps pay, perhaps make an account. I don't really want that, so I'm going to go look for something else that I can just right-click on and get the get a free image quick.
Is there any way that you can tell if these photos are not modified with that many layers? When you look at a picture like that, there's no function you can tell right away.
If it's a PSD file, when you get it from somebody from like a Shutterstock, then it would have layers in it that you could turn on and off. If it's a JPEG or a TIFF, it's flattened. Yep. All right. I'm going to just try right-clicking on it up here, see if this works. Save image as yellow flowers in my downloads folder. We'll see if that worked. Back in Photoshop, I want to open that. File, open, and in my downloads folder, where did you go? Didn't I just call you yellow? Huh. Yellow flowers JPEG, there we go. Okay, so this is the background that I'm going to use. I'm going to look and see how big it is. So image size, or Command Option I. This is telling me that this is a 10-inch by 7-inch low-res photo that I happen to download. So if my Buttercups are high-res, 300 pixels per inch, when I bring them into this file, they're going to be ginormous. So I just want to know what I'm working with before I go on next. Just helpful hints for you guys. So I'm going to say cancel. Now I'm going to go back to my tab of Buttercups, and I'm going to show you guys how you can move things from one file to another using the drag and the tabs at the top. So in Buttercups, make sure that you're on the actual layer that you want, which is your modify layer. Make sure that's the one that's highlighted, and switch to your move tool. And if you've never done this before, just watch first, because if you let go of your mouse at the wrong time, it doesn't work. What you do is you take the layer that you want with your move tool and you start moving it, and you actually go up to the tab of the file that you want it in, and you wait for it to activate. I have not let go of my mouse, and then I pull down and let go, and that drops it into this file. You could put these two screens side by side and drag across them, but that requires you to change your view, whereas this version, you drag up into the tab of the one you want. When it activates, you come down into the actual screen of it and let go there. So my Buttercups were low res, and there they are, and they look pretty decent on a yellow background. You can definitely tell that they're feathered, in my case, maybe a little too much. But it looks like a pretty good selection. We did a good job, right? So let's stop here. You can close these files. These are just for practice to learn a little bit better about what tool to use and when. So you can close these out, and